Let me tell you something right now that might shake your spirit. God does not give warnings for entertainment. He ain't whispering in your soul just for background noise. When God warns you, it's because he loves you enough not to let you crash without a sign on the road saying, "Turn around now before it's too late." But the problem is too many people hear the warning and they still hit the gas. And if you skip this message today, you might cry for the rest of your life, wonder in why you didn't listen when you had the chance. See, when God warns you that relationship, that habit, that job, that friend, that decision, it's not just a suggestion. It's divine direction, and some of y'all have been ignoring the alarms so long, the smoke is already in your lungs and the fire is at your feet. But it's not too late, not yet. God's warnings always come before the storm expanded. You ever notice how the weather shifts before a storm rolls in? There's a stillness in the air. The light changes, the sky darkens, the temperature drops. Even nature knows how to prepare when trouble's on the way. Life works the same way. God don't let storms hit without giving you a heads up first. The signs are there, but it takes spiritual eyes to see them. Sometimes the warning don't look like a red light flashing in the sky. It shows up as discomfort. It shows up as tension in a relationship that used to be peaceful. It shows up in your spirit when you walk into a room and something don't feel right. God starts pulling your attention away from things before they explode because he's trying to keep you safe. But here's what people do: they ignore the clouds. They see the storm rolling in and say, "Oh, it's probably nothing." You keep driving towards something God is trying to help you detour around. And then when it hits, we act surprised. But the truth is we knew. We just didn't want to admit it. God's warnings ain't meant to scare you. They're meant to prepare you. He gives you time to pack up, time to walk away, time to cancel the plan, time to move your feet. But if you wait too long, if you sit in denial, if you think your wisdom is better than his direction, that's when the storm catches you unprepared. See, when the warning comes, that's when you have to act. You can't just pray about it and then keep walking the same way. Faith is obedience in motion. If God shows you what's coming, it means he trusts you enough to do something about it. You can't wait for confirmation from people when you've already been warned by the Creator. Some folks want the lightning to strike before they believe the cloud is real. But by the time the lightning comes, it's already too late. The damage is already done. That's why spiritual sensitivity is critical. You gotta learn to listen when there's still time to move, not when the damage is done. Too many people have cried tears not because God didn't speak, but because they didn't listen. He gave them every clue. The dream, the word, the uneasy feeling, the scripture that hit different, the conversation that exposed the truth, the opportunity to exit gracefully, but they ignored all of it. Don't be the person who says, "I should have known." You did know. Deep down you knew, but your comfort zone got louder than your conviction, and now the pain is louder than both. That's what happens when you skip the warning and walk straight into the storm without an umbrella. Sometimes the warning is a delay. You thought things would move fast, but they slowed down. That wasn't punishment, that was protection. That was God giving you time to rethink, to reevaluate, to reconsider. But we hate delays. So instead of sitting and listening, we push and rush and run headfirst into chaos. Sometimes God will frustrate your plans to save your future. You had everything lined up. Everything looked perfect on the surface. But something kept breaking, kept falling apart. That wasn't coincidence. That was divine disruption. A broken plan can be the loudest warning of all. It hurts to let go of something you thought was meant for you. But it hurts worse to stay with something God is actively removing from your life. Some storms are allowed because we refuse to move. And sometimes the only way we learn is by losing what we weren't willing to walk away from. The blessing of a warning is it gives you a chance to change course, a chance to choose better, a chance to avoid heartache. But if you think you're smarter than the voice that created the storm, you'll find yourself drowning in regret. And it ain't God's fault, it's your decision. Let me tell you, the warning comes with mercy. It's a sign of God's love. He didn't have to show you. He didn't have to make it clear. He didn't have to pull the curtain back. But he did, because he wants you to make it. He wants you to win. He wants you to avoid what others didn't escape. There are people in your life right now who didn't get the warnings you're getting. They had to learn the hard way. But here you are blessed enough to hear the caution before the consequence. Don't take that for granted. Warnings are sacred. Warnings are rare. Warnings are a second chance before the first punch. So what you do next matters more than what you've done before. God gave you the sign. He gave you the heads up. Now it's on you to move. Because if you stay still when you're supposed to shift, the storm won't spare you just because you were stubborn. Your GUT is God's whisper, don't ignore IT expanded. There's something powerful about that feeling deep down inside, that tug, that tension, that quiet little nudge in your belly that says something's off. You can't explain it, can't always prove it, but it's there. That's not paranoia. That's not nervous energy. That's God's whisper, coming through your spirit, warning you before the fall. Most people call it a gut feeling. But that gut is where your spirit listens before your mind understands. It's where God speaks in silence, because sometimes the most powerful messages don't come through a loud voice or flashing lights. They come through that quiet check in your soul that says, don't go in there, don't trust them, don't sign that, or leave now. And when you feel that you better listen, cause when God gives you peace, it's on purpose. And when he takes that peace away, that's not confusion, that's protection. That uneasiness is often God saying, pay attention, danger is near. But you know what happens, people ignore it. They silence it with logic. They dismiss it with comfort, and then later they cry over what their spirit tried to stop. You don't need a prophet every time. Sometimes your inner knowing is the prophecy. And if you keep asking God for answers, and then ignore the answer that comes through your own discomfort, then you ain't looking for truth, you're looking for convenience. And that's how people end up trapped. You gotta train yourself to stop brushing off your gut. Because when God sees you won't listen to the whisper, sometimes he sends the storm, and not because he's mad at you, but because he knows you won't move without a push. But oh, if you had just listened to the soft voice, you could have avoided the hard fall. You were about to date them, and something inside you paused, but you said, maybe I'm overthinking. You weren't overthinking, you were being warned. That business partner made you feel uneasy. That decision made your stomach turn. That environment sucked the peace out of your chest. Those weren't coincidences. Those were God's way of saying, this ain't it. Some of the worst seasons in life start when we silence the signal. You hear it, but you don't want it to be true. You feel it, but you don't want to give up the plan. You sense it, but you keep going anyway. Then when everything crashes, we say, I knew something wasn't right. And we're right, we did know. Your gut ain't designed to give you full explanations. It don't hand you a PowerPoint. It won't give you every reason. It just gives you that spiritual alert that says, check again, wait, stop. And you got to learn how to obey without full clarity. That's called trust. That's called faith. That's called maturity. Stop needing confirmation from 5 people when you already got conviction in your soul. You don't need a committee to sign your obedience. When God speaks to your gut, that's all the green light you need to make a move. People might call you paranoid. They might not understand. Let them think what they want. They're not the ones who will suffer the consequences. If something steals your peace, that's your clue. If something makes you restless, that's your sign. If something makes your joy shrink and your fear grow, that's your warning system lighting up like a fire alarm. And the longer you stay in the place you're being pulled away from, the more you disconnect from your own divine instincts. The gut is where God places his early warnings. It's the emotional smoke detector that starts beeping before the fire gets out of control. But some people get so used to the noise, they take the battery out and ignore it. And you already know what happens in a house with no alarm: total loss when the fire comes. And don't let your pride talk louder than your spirit. Pride will say, "I got this." Pride will say, "I'm not scared." Pride will say, "I already made my decision." But your spirit is begging you to reconsider. Your spirit is trying to save you from months or years of unnecessary pain. The tragedy is never that God didn't speak. The tragedy is that we kept scrolling, kept talking, kept planning, kept moving, and completely ignored the most faithful warning system we were ever given: our own soul. That inner voice, that sacred hesitation, that voice you feel, not just hear. Every time you ignore your gut, your future gets quieter. Because every warning you skip, every whisper you reject, adds noise between you and your destiny. You don't just lose peace, you lose direction. You lose connection. You lose sensitivity. And the more you ignore the whisper, the louder God has to shout later. It don't take a disaster for you to turn back. It just takes obedience to a whisper. Trust that voice. Respect your peace. Honor your uneasiness. Don't brush it off. That's not fear. That's foresight. And God gave it to you so you wouldn't have to learn everything the hard way. If you stay where God said leave, you'll pay the price expanded. One of the hardest things for people to accept is that sometimes the place you love is not the place you're meant to stay. Just because it feels familiar, just because it once brought joy, just because you've been there a long time, doesn't mean you're supposed to keep standing in that same spot. When God says leave, he means it. And when you don't, you end up paying for it with your peace, your purpose, and sometimes your entire future. There's a moment in every journey where you hear the whisper to move on. Maybe it's a job that's gone stale, but the check keeps you stuck. Maybe it's a relationship that started sweet but turned sour. Maybe it's a friendship that turned toxic, or a habit that once soothed you but now strangles you. God gives you that nudge, and what do? We justify staying. We tell ourselves it's not that bad. We say, maybe I can fix it. We say, I don't want to start over. But what we're really saying is, I don't trust God enough to believe there's something better on the other side of this door. So we stay. And that's when the suffering begins. When God tells you to leave, he's not trying to hurt you. He's trying to rescue you. He sees what you can't see. He knows what's coming. He knows what's dying. He knows what's draining your strength. And he loves you too much to let you stay attached to what's killing you slowly. But some people would rather die in comfort than live in uncertainty. They'd rather stay in a burning building than step outside into unfamiliar air. And so they stay. They stay in jobs that drain them, relationships that break them, environments that stunt them, all because leaving feels harder than suffering. You ever watched a flower wilt in a room with no sunlight? That's what it looks like when a person refuses to leave where God no longer wants them. They're still alive, but they're not living. They're still showing up, but the light is gone. They're functioning, but their soul is fading. That's the price of staying too long. You might not see the consequences immediately. That's the tricky part. Sometimes life keeps moving like nothing's wrong, but slowly, silently, things start to collapse. The joy disappears, the energy fades, the clarity gets blurry. You start questioning yourself, doubting your value, losing your identity, and don't even realize it all started the moment you disobeyed that leave now command. Leaving doesn't always mean walking out the door today. Sometimes leaving means emotionally detaching. Sometimes it means cutting the cord in your heart before your feet ever move. Sometimes it's about making the decision internally before you take a single external step. But make no mistake, leaving is obedience. Disobedience isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It looks like smiling while you sink. It looks like working overtime in a dead season. It looks like showing up for a role you were fired from spiritually a long time ago. When you stay somewhere out of fear, you make fear your God, and nothing born from fear brings peace. Some folks think loyalty means staying, but real loyalty is being faithful to God's voice, not just people, jobs, or routines. You can be loyal and leave. You can love someone and still walk away when God says the season is over. Because if you stay out of guilt or fear, you'll start bleeding in silence, and the people around you won't even notice. It's painful to leave what you once prayed for. It's painful to walk away from what once gave you hope. But when God closes a door, it ain't because He's punishing you, it's because He's preparing you for more. And you can't step into more while clinging to what's expired. If you stay where God told you to leave, everything you build there will come at a cost. You'll work twice as hard for half the result. You'll spend your energy patching holes in a sinking ship. You'll confuse endurance with stubbornness, and you'll wonder why nothing feels right anymore. Sometimes God will stop blessing you in a place just to get your attention. He'll dry up the well. He'll remove the favor. He'll disrupt your rhythm, not because He's angry, but because He's trying to wake you up. This is not where I need you anymore. The grace is gone, and when the grace leaves, staying becomes painful. People will say, "But I invested so much time." Yes, you did, but don't let time become a trap. A mistake doesn't become your destiny just because you gave it years. It's better to walk away now than to cry for decades over something you were supposed to exit last season. Your growth is on the other side of obedience. Your healing, your breakthrough, your clarity, it's all waiting for you, but not in the place God asked you to leave. He's not going to meet you in disobedience. He's already moved forward. The question is, will you catch up? Not every blessing is from God. Some are traps expanded. One of the greatest deceptions in life is thinking that everything good must be from God. That just because it looks shiny, it must be holy. That just because it came easy, it must be right. But the truth is not every door that opens is divine. Some of those open doors are nothing but disguised cages. And if you walk through the wrong one, you'll call it a blessing until it breaks you. The enemy knows how to dress a trap in glitter. He don't show up with horns and a pitchfork. He shows up in opportunities, in people, in packages that match your preferences. He watches what you like. He listens to what you pray for. And then he sends a counterfeit that looks like your dream but is designed to delay your destiny. That's why discernment is critical. You can't just rely on how something feels, because the trap always feels good in the beginning. It feels like favor. It feels like a breakthrough. It feels like answered prayer. But if it costs you your peace, your purpose, or your principles, it didn't come from God. Some of y'all been calling things blessings that are really burdens. You thought that relationship was a gift until it started controlling you, breaking you, silencing your voice. You thought that job was a miracle until it pulled you away from your values and drained your soul. Not everything wrapped in success is sacred. God don't bless you at the cost of your integrity. He don't elevate you into situations that strip you of your identity. When something is from Him, it may stretch you, but it won't destroy you. It may challenge you, but it won't corrupt you. But when something comes to derail you, it always demands something sacred in exchange. Some of the most dangerous moments in life are right after you get what you want. That's when you're least alert. That's when you let your guard down. That's when you stop praying with urgency. And that's when the enemy sends the trap because he knows you won't be watching. You'll be too busy celebrating to see the cost. That's why you need to test every blessing. Don't just thank God for it, ask Him if it's really from Him. Not everything that shines was sent. Some things are assigned by darkness to look like light. And if you don't check the source, you'll start building your life on something that was never stable in the first place. Sometimes it's a person. They show up in your life saying all the right things, checking all your boxes, making you feel seen, and you think it's a divine connection. But weeks later, months later, you realize their spirit don't match their smile. And now you're emotionally entangled in a trap you could have avoided if you had listened to your spirit instead of your loneliness. Sometimes it's a business offer. It promises fast success, fast money, fast growth. It sounds perfect, but deep down you know something's off. The terms feel shady. The energy don't sit right. But you ignore the warning because the opportunity looks like overflow. And then you sign your name to something that was never meant to carry your name. The trap don't show up looking like pain. It shows up looking like pleasure. And that's how it fools you. The enemy always offers you what you want now to rob you of what you need later. That's the trade-off. He don't just want your time, he wants your purpose. And he's patient enough to wait until you're distracted by blessings to strike. That's why peace is your compass. If something looks good but costs you your peace, it's not worth it. If it looks promising but pulls you away from your purpose, it's poison. If it feels right but takes you out of alignment with God, it's a setup. And if you keep calling traps blessings, don't be surprised when your life feels cursed. It's time to start asking the right questions. Does this draw me closer to purpose or pull me away? Does this require me to compromise my values? Does this bring me peace or just temporary pleasure? If it doesn't pass the test, walk away even if it looks like everything you wanted. You gotta mature past chasing everything that glitters. Because when you get too hungry for breakthrough, you'll settle for imitation. And the imitation will fill your hands but drain your soul. It'll look like a win until it turns into a war. And you'll be fighting to keep something that God never told you to take. Discernment is more powerful than desire. Your feelings will lie to you. Your desperation will blind you. But if you stay close to God, if you keep your ear to His voice and your heart in His hands, He'll show you what's real and what's not. He'll expose the trap before it snaps shut. Not every open door is a blessing. Not every opportunity is your assignment, and not every win is a victory. Some are silent losses with good marketing. The only way you'll know the difference is if you listen to the warning before you call it a miracle. Delayed obedience is disobedience. Expanded obedience is not just about saying yes to God. It's about saying yes on time. Timing matters. Delayed obedience isn't obedience at all. It's quiet rebellion dressed up in hesitation. When God speaks, He means now, not later, not next week, not after you're comfortable, because every delay carries a price. See, we love to say, I'm just waiting for confirmation. But half the time we're stalling because we're scared. We're not seeking clarity, we're hoping God changes His mind. But God don't send a word without a purpose. If He said move, it's because the ground is about to shift. If He said speak, it's because silence will cost you something. The longer you wait to obey, the further you drift from the blessing attached to that instruction. Some blessings are tied to a specific moment, a window, a divine opportunity. And once that window closes, you might still obey, but you'll be walking through a door that don't lead where it used to. Obedience is not convenient. It doesn't wait until you feel ready. In fact, most of the time, when God tells you to do something, it's uncomfortable, scary, inconvenient, or confusing. But that's the point He wants to see if you trust Him enough to obey, even when it doesn't make sense. You keep saying, I'll do it later. Later could cost you your peace. Later could cost you your protection. Later could cost you a promise you've been praying for. God's not gonna force you, but He's not gonna hold the blessing in place forever either. Your delay can become your disqualification. Some people missed their moment because they were waiting for it to feel perfect. Let me tell you, obedience ain't about feelings. It's about faith. If you only obey when it feels good, you ain't obeying God, you're obeying comfort. And comfort don't grow you. It just distracts you until the door shuts. There's a difference between preparation and procrastination, and a lot of folks are hiding behind preparation. They keep saying, I'm getting ready. But how long you gon' get ready before you start walking? At some point, you gotta realize that your delay is disobedience with makeup on. You say you're waiting on God, but truth is God's been waiting on you to trust, waiting on you to stop second guessing. Waiting on you to step out, waiting on you to stop asking for another sign when he already gave you 10. You're not waiting on God, you're postponing your promise. And don't confuse God's patience with his permission. Just because he hasn't snatched the opportunity away yet doesn't mean he's okay with your delay. He's just giving you grace, but grace has limits. One day, that door you keep tiptoeing around is going to shut, and you'll be left crying, I should have listened when I had the chance. You don't get to control the timing of your blessing. That's not your job. Your job is to say yes when God speaks and then move your feet. Too many people lose years trying to negotiate with instructions. You can't bargain with obedience. It's either you trust or you don't. And when you wait too long, life moves on without you. Obedience opens doors faster than hustle ever could. But disobedience delays destiny, destroys peace, and disconnects you from God's flow. Every yes you hesitate to give pulls you further from where you were born to be. And the worst part, you know it deep down, you feel the clock ticking in your soul. If you're wondering why everything feels off, why nothing's flowing, why you're restless, why your prayers feel stuck, it could be because you didn't move when he told you to. You didn't obey when the moment was hot. And now you're trying to force a blessing in a season that's already shifted. There's nothing worse than watching someone else walk through the door that had your name on it, but they listened and you didn't. Don't be the person who watches their future from the sidelines because they were too scared to step up when God said, go. Delayed obedience doesn't just rob you, it affects others too. Your yes might be the answer to someone else's prayer. Your obedience might be the bridge someone else needs to walk across. So when you delay, you don't just hurt yourself, you delay someone else's break through too. God's word don't expire, but his windows do. When he calls, answer. When he says move, don't wait. When he gives you an assignment, do it even if your knees are shaking. Because what's waiting on the other side of obedience is always better than what's keeping you comfortable now. The price of ignoring God is always higher than you think. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is, it's not that serious. We minimize the warning, we downplay the conviction, we act like we got time. But here's the truth, ignoring God always comes with a cost, and that cost is always higher than you expected. You thought you were just postponing a decision, but what you really did was open the door to consequences that don't show up right away, but hit hard when they do. See, God don't warn for nothing. When he puts his hand on your shoulder and tells you to stop, turn, leave, or listen, he's trying to spare you pain. But when you ignore that instruction, you don't just miss the blessing. You inherit the burden, you step into territory that wasn't made for you, and everything feels off. The danger of ignoring God is that the consequences don't always come quickly. Sometimes life stays quiet for a while. Things still look good. People still applaud. The money still flows. The smile is still there. And you think, see, I'm fine. But what you don't realize is you're accumulating a debt. That debt builds in silence. That disobedience collects interest. Every day you ignore the warning, the cost goes up. And then one day, it hits the breakdown, the betrayal, the failure, the fall. And by then, it's not just painful. It's devastating, because now you're reaping the harvest of seeds you planted with your silence. God's warnings are not suggestions. They are divine interventions, and when you treat them casually, you lose access to clarity. Your spiritual GPS goes out. You start making decisions from your flesh instead of your faith. And suddenly, the things you used to be sure about don't feel right anymore. You ever noticed how much confusion follows disobedience? The moment you step out of God's instruction, your peace leaves first, then your energy drops, then your mind gets cloudy. That's because peace is tied to obedience. You can't disobey God and expect to feel clear, headed and calm. It don't work like that. Some people think they're strong because they survived the storm they walked into. But strength isn't about surviving what you could have avoided. Real strength is listening before it hurts. Real strength is being wise enough to walk away before the building collapses. Don't wear suffering like a badge when it came from a decision God warned you not to make. And yes, God will forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You can be loved by God and still pay for ignoring His voice. You can be His child and still lose sleep, time, opportunities, and peace, all because you didn't listen when He tried to steer you around the pit. It's like driving with your GPS on and ignoring every instruction. The GPS don't yell. It just says recalculating. But if you keep going the wrong way, it'll stop rerouting. Eventually, you'll be so far off course that the only way back is a complete reset. That's what happens when you keep ignoring God. You drift too far. And now it's not just about a step back. It's about a full rebuild. That relationship He told you to end, now you're tangled in trauma. That deal He told you not to take, now your finances are a mess. That friendship He said to let go, now you're carrying their drama and it's weighing you down. All of it could have been avoided if you had just obeyed when the voice came softly. You don't have to understand why God said what He said. Your job is not to figure out the why. Your job is to trust the who. Trust the one who sees the danger up ahead. Trust the one who knows what looks good now might destroy you later. Trust the one who's trying to save your soul, not just satisfy your feelings. The truth is, you've already felt the pain of disobedience before. This ain't your first time, but every time you promise yourself, next time I'll listen, and then the next warning comes, and you still delay. That's not confusion, that's pride, and pride always makes you pay double. There are people right now who would give anything to rewind time and obey the first time God spoke. They lost families, dreams, years of progress, all because they ignored the signs. Don't wait until you become one of them. Your warning is your mercy. Your obedience is your protection. Don't let your silence become your sentence. Don't let your delay become your downfall. And don't let your pride become your prison. Because the price of ignoring God is never just discomfort, it's often a lifetime of regret dressed up as a lesson. You can either learn through wisdom or you can learn through wounds, but one way or another, you will learn. And if you keep ignoring God, life will eventually force you to listen, not with peace, but through pain. Make the choice now before the cost becomes too high to afford. God loves you enough to warn you. Don't make Him watch you fall. Let's get one thing straight. God's warnings are not about control, they're about care. He ain't in heaven trying to micromanage your life. He ain't trying to scare you into obedience. No, He warns you because He loves you too much to stay silent while you self-destruct. That warning you feel, that's love in motion. You gotta understand the heart behind the warning. It's like a parent yelling, "Get out of the street." When a car's coming, they're not trying to ruin your fun, they're trying to save your life. That's what God does. He sees what's coming before it ever touches you. And instead of letting you walk blind, He sends the warning as a lifeline. But the question is, are you listening? Or are you treating God like background noise? Because the longer you ignore His voice, the fainter it becomes. Not because He stops speaking, but because your own noise gets louder. Your desires, your distractions, your pride. They start drowning out the one voice that could actually deliver you. God's not passive. He don't give you the silent treatment when you mess up. He speaks. He corrects. He convicts. He pulls on your heart. He makes you restless. He places people in your path. He blocks what you're chasing. All of that is divine intervention in disguise, but too many people treat conviction like an attack. You start to feel uncomfortable and say, "Why is this happening to me?" What's happening is God is trying to get your attention before life teaches you the hard way. He'd rather you feel uncomfortable in the truth than comfortable in a lie. He loves you too much to let you settle, too much to let you stay in the wrong place with the wrong people, too much to let you build your identity on something shaky. So he sends the whisper, then he sends the discomfort, then the delay, then the red flags, and if you still won't move, sometimes he lets the collapse come not to hurt you, but to wake you up. You ever wonder why certain things keep breaking down in your life? It's not always the devil. Sometimes it's divine sabotage. God breaking up your plans because they were never part of his will. You keep trying to force the puzzle piece in, and he keeps pulling it back. That's not cruelty. That's mercy. But here's what breaks God's heart. When he's done all he can to warn you, to protect you, to steer you and you still walk straight into the fire. Not because you didn't know, but because you didn't believe it would burn you. That's what hurts. Watching his child fall from a place he already tried to carry them away from. God don't want to watch you cry over what he tried to prevent. He don't want to pick up the pieces when he already gave you the map to avoid the shatter. But he won't force you. He gave you free will, and that means you get to choose your path. But you don't get to choose your consequences. And when you finally fall, when it finally breaks, when the silence is no longer avoidable, you'll realize that every ignored warning came with a cost. Not because God wanted to punish you, but because you refused to believe his love was in the warning. His love don't always sound like comfort. Sometimes it sounds like no. Sometimes it sounds like leave. Sometimes it sounds like wait. And sometimes it sounds like a door slamming shut. But that's still love, because any love that won't correct you will eventually destroy you. God loves you enough to make you uncomfortable now so you don't live with regret later. He loves you enough to send friends who speak truth even when you don't want to hear it. He loves you enough to disrupt your plans to save your purpose. He loves you enough to let you break if that's what it takes to bring you back. But he don't want to watch you fall. He don't want to say, "I tried to tell you." That's not the heart of the Father. He wants you to listen now, to turn now, to surrender now, so he can lead you into peace, not pick you up out of pain. This ain't about fear, it's about freedom. When God warns you, it's not to trap you, it's to release you. Release you from fake people, from broken systems, from habits that kill, from dreams that aren't yours. And if you just listen, you can avoid years of suffering from something you were never meant to carry. So don't make God watch you fall. Hear him now, move now, obey now, because his warning isn't rejection, it's redemption trying to reach you one more time. Listen to me now. You've heard the warnings. You've felt the weight of every truth. This ain't just motivation, this is a divine message wrapped in love and urgency. Because the worst pain you will ever feel is the pain you could have avoided. The regret that whispers, "God tried to tell me, but I didn't listen." There comes a moment in every life where you stand at the crossroads. One road is obedience, the other is pride. One leads to protection, the other to pain. One is the path of peace, the other is a hallway of heartbreak that never ends. And if you don't choose wisely, you'll cry for the rest of your life over something you could have walked away from. God is not a God of confusion. He doesn't mix signals. If he said it, he meant it. If he showed you, it's real. If he warned you, it's serious. Don't play with his voice. Don't gamble with your destiny. Don't keep asking for signs when he's already placed sirens in your spirit. He's been trying to protect you from the wrong people, from the wrong decisions, from emotional traps, spiritual distractions, financial destruction, and years of wasted time. He's not holding you back, he's holding you up, keeping you from the cliff you don't even see coming. So this is your moment. This is your turning point. You can't keep living like you didn't hear what you just heard. You can't walk away from this message and act like you didn't feel something shift in your soul. Because if you ignore this, you won't just lose time, you'll lose your way. God is love, yes, but love warns, love corrects, love blocks what looks good when it knows the price behind it. That warning in your gut, that discomfort in your spirit, that door that slammed shut, that delay you keep fighting, that storm that just missed your doorstep, that was love in disguise. You don't have to cry forever. You don't have to suffer because of silence. You don't have to live in regret. But you do have to act, and you have to act now. Obedience doesn't wait. Faith doesn't stall. Growth doesn't ask for permission. This ain't just a message, this is a wake-up call. God has already warned you. Don't make him watch you fall, because if you skip this, if you ignore this moment, if you walk away like it's just another speech, you will cry, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually and possibly forever. Don't skip what could save your life.